I remember the moment my world cracked open like it was yesterday. It was a rainy afternoon in late autumn, the kind where the sky hangs low and heavy, pressing down on everything beneath it. I was standing in our living room, the one I'd spent years turning into a home with soft throw blankets and photos of our family vacations framed on the mantel. My husband, David, was across from me. His face twisted in a way I'd never seen before. Anger, exactly, but something colder, more detached. "Alina," he said, his voice flat like a stranger's, "we need to talk about your behavior. Mother's concerned, and frankly, so am I." Those words hit me like a slap from an invisible hand. My mother-in-law Vivian had always been a shadow in our marriage, but this, calling her private security on me, turning David against me as if I were some intruder in my own life. I felt my chest tighten, the air thick with the scent of the chamomile tea I'd just brewed. Now growing cold on the side table, my hands trembled as I set down the mug, the porcelain clinking softly against the wood. How did it come to this? Me, the woman who'd built this family from nothing, now being treated like a threat. I sank into the armchair, the fabric worn from years of evenings spent reading bedtime stories to our kids. David paced, his footsteps muffled on the rug, avoiding my eyes. "She says, you've been erratic, Alina. Unstable. That you might need help." Erratic. Unstable. The words echoed in my mind, sharp and unbelievable. Vivian, with her polished mansion and her entourage of guards, had whispered poison into his ear, and he'd swallowed it whole. But then, as the truth unraveled, I discovered something that would change everything, something that would expose her for who she really was, and bring us all to a reckoning we never saw coming. Let me take you back, though, to how it all began. Before the storm, there was the calm, the kind of everyday rhythm that lulls you into believing life is predictable, safe. Our home was a modest two-story in the suburbs of Chicago, with a backyard where the kids' swing set creaked in the wind and the grill still smelled faintly of last summer's barbecues. David and I had been married for 12 years, high school sweethearts who'd fought through the early struggles, his job as a mid-level accountant, my part-time work as a graphic designer while raising Lily and Max. Our 8 and 10-year-olds. Mornings were my favorite. I'd wake to the soft hum of the coffee maker David always set the night before, the aroma of fresh grounds pulling me downstairs. He'd be there in his button-down shirt, tie slightly askew, packing lunches with that focused furrow in his brow. "Morning, love," he'd murmur, pressing a kiss to my forehead, his stubble grazing my skin. The kids would tumble in, Lily with her wild curls and Max rubbing sleep from his eyes, arguing over who got the last banana. I'd smooth things over with a laugh, slicing it in half and adding peanut butter, the sticky sweetness filling the kitchen. Workdays blurred into a comforting routine. I'd drop the kids at school, their backpacks thumping against the car seats, then head to my home office, a corner of the sunroom with my sketchpad and laptop, surrounded by plants I'd nurtured from cuttings. David would call around noon, his voice warm through the phone. "How's the project going? Miss you already." We'd chat about dinner plans, maybe spaghetti with meatballs, the sauce simmering all afternoon, filling the house with garlic and tomatoes. Vivian, David's mother, lived across town in her sprawling estate, a relic from her late husband's real estate empire. She was the matriarch, elegant in her cashmere sweaters and pearl earrings, her voice always measured, like she was narrating a documentary about her own life. We'd visit every Sunday for brunch, the table set with fine china and fresh flowers from her garden. "Alina dear," she'd say, her smile tight at the edges, "you look tired. Are you managing all right with the children?" There was always that undercurrent, a subtle dig wrapped in concern, but I'd brush it off. David adored her. She'd raised him alone after his father passed young, instilling in him a sense of duty that bordered on devotion. Our evenings were the glue that held us. After homework and baths, the splash of water, the giggle of bubbles. I'd tuck the kids in, reading from worn storybooks until their eyelids drooped. David and I would collapse on the couch, his arm around me, the TV flickering with some mindless show. "We're lucky, you know," I'd whisper, feeling the steady rise and fall of his chest. He'd nod, his fingers tracing lazy circles on my shoulder. It was ordinary, yes, but it was ours, built on trust, on the little gestures, like him remembering my favorite tea, or me ironing his shirts just so. Vivian wasn't absent from this picture. She hovered at the edges. She'd call David weekly, her voice carrying through the phone with updates on her social calendar or gentle reminders about family obligations. "Don't forget the gala next month," she'd say, and David would agree without hesitation. I admired her poise, even envied it sometimes, but there was a distance, a coolness in her gaze when it landed on me. as if I were a puzzle she couldn't quite solve. Still, I made efforts, baking her favorite lemon bars for holidays, the temps of zest lingering on my fingers, or organizing playdates where she'd spoil the grandkids with toys that clattered across her marble floors. Looking back, those days felt like a fragile bubble, shimmering but thin. The first hint of trouble came subtly, like a cloud drifting over the sun. It was about 6 months before that rainy confrontation. During one of our Sunday brunches, Vivian had hired private security recently, ex-military types in dark suits who patrolled her property discreetly. With all the unrest these days, she'd explained, waving a manicured hand, one can't be too careful. David nodded approvingly, but I felt a prickle of unease. The air in her dining room suddenly cooler, despite the warm scones on the table. That day, as I helped clear plates, the clink of silverware echoing, I overheard Vivian on the phone in the next room. Her voice was low, urgent. Keep an eye on things. Report back if anything seems off. I paused, dish towel in hand, the fabric damp against my palm. Who was she talking to? About what? When I asked David later, driving home with the kids chattering in the back, he shrugged it off. Probably just business. Alina, Mom's got investments to protect. His tone was casual, but his grip on the steering wheel tightened just a fraction, knuckles paling. I let it go, or tried to, but small things started to accumulate, like dust motes in sunlight. David began taking more calls from Vivian, stepping out to the porch where the wind carried his murmurs away. He'd come back distracted, his smile not quite reaching his eyes. Once, I found a note in his pocket while doing laundry, the detergent's floral scent mixing with the paper's crispness. It read, "Confirm details. Discretion key." Vivian's handwriting, elegant and looped. When I asked, he laughed it off, just helping with her estate planning, nothing to worry about. Yet worry crept in, slow and insidious. I'd catch him staring at me oddly during dinner, as if reassessing something familiar. "Everything okay?" I'd ask, passing the salad bowl, the leaves crisp under my fork. "Of course," he'd reply, but his voice held a new hesitance, like words carefully chosen. The kids noticed too, Lily asking why Daddy seemed sad, her small hand tugging at my sleeve. I'd hug her close, inhaling the strawberry shampoo in her hair, and assure her it was just work stress. Then came the evening that shifted everything. I was in the kitchen, chopping vegetables for stir-fry, the knife's rhythmic thud against the board soothing. David came home late, his briefcase thumping heavily on the floor. He poured a glass of water, the faucet running longer than necessary, and finally said, "Mom mentioned you seemed upset at brunch last week, said you snapped at her." I froze, carrot peels curling under my fingers. Snapped? I'd only politely disagreed about a school choice for Max. I didn't snap, David, we just talked. He sighed, rubbing his temples. "She thinks you're under pressure. Maybe we should get you some help." Help. The word hung in the air, heavy as the steam rising from the pan. That night, as we lay in bed, the sheets cool against my skin, I stared at the ceiling fan's slow spin. Doubt wormed its way in. Was I overreacting? Or was Vivian planting seeds, turning the soil of our marriage against me? Little did I know, the real storm was brewing, and the first raindrops were just the beginning. The doubts grew quietly, the way mold spreads behind wallpaper unseen until it's everywhere. I started noticing the security cars more often, not just at Vivian's estate, but in our neighborhood. A black SUV with tinted windows idling 2 houses down, engine humming low like a warning. I'd catch it from the kitchen window while rinsing breakfast dishes, suds sliding down my wrists. Once, when I walked Lily to the bus stop, the same car eased past us, slow enough that I could see the driver's earpiece glinting. My stomach flipped. I told myself I was being paranoid. Mothers-in-law don't hire surveillance on their sons' wives. That only happens in movies. But the feeling clung to me like damp wool. David began asking small, strange questions over dinner. "Have you been sleeping okay, Alina?" he'd say, watching me twirl pasta around my fork. Or, "You seem jumpy when the phone rings. Is everything all right at work?" His tone was gentle, concerned, like a doctor probing a wound he already knows is infected. I'd laugh it off, force a smile, feel the muscles in my cheeks ache from the effort. Inside, something was coiling tighter and tighter. One Thursday in early spring, I came home from the grocery store to find David in the home office, the door half closed. The printer was running. I heard the rhythmic whine of paper feeding through, then the soft slap of pages stacking. I pushed the door open quietly. He startled, spun around, and for a split second, his face was pure panic, like a child caught with a stolen cookie. On the desk lay a thick manila folder. The top sheet was visible. A psychological evaluation form with my name typed neatly at the top. Alina Marie Thompson, 203, 1 April tahun 1987. Reason for referral: erratic behavior, possible mood instability, risk to minor children. My blood turned to ice water. David, I whispered, the grocery bags slipping from my numb fingers. Milk cartons hit the hardwood with a dull thud, leaking white across the floorboards. What is this? He scrambled to close the folder, but not before I saw the letterhead. Dr. Margaret Halden, forensic psychologist, appointed by the Circuit Court of Cook County. He stood, palms raised like I was a spooked horse. Alina, it's not what you think, not what I think. My voice cracked, raw and ugly. You're having me evaluated, like I'm some danger. It's Mom, he said quickly, too quickly. She's worried. She thinks you might be having a breakdown. She only wants what's best for the kids. The room tilted. I gripped the doorframe, nails digging into the painted wood. Your mother had me follow. She hired people to watch me. And now she's trying to prove I'm crazy so I couldn't finish the sentence. The thought was too monstrous. David's face crumpled. She said you've been aggressive, that you threw a plate at brunch last month, that you've been yelling at the children when I'm not home. His voice shook. She played me the recording. Alina. Recording. There was a recording. I hadn't thrown a plate. I'd dropped one slippery from dish soap and it shattered. Vivian had been standing right there, smiling thinly as I apologized over and over, and yelling at the children. The worst I'd done was raise my voice when Max tracked Mud through the house after she'd kept them an hour past pickup, feeding them sugar until they were feral. She'd staged it, edited it, weaponized normal moments. That night I barely slept. David took the folder and locked it in his briefcase, but the damage was done. I lay beside him in the dark, listening to his breathing even out, while mine came in shallow, panicked bursts. The ceiling seemed lower, pressing down. I could almost feel the eyes on Mikamura's. I couldn't see. Men in cars taking notes on how many times I checked the locks. The next morning, I did something I'd never done before. I waited until David left for work, kissed the kids goodbye with a brightness I didn't feel. And then I drove straight to Vivian's estate. The gates were open and usual for a weekday. I parked in the circular drive, gravel crunching too loudly under the tires. One of her security men stepped forward, hand raised. I recognized him, tall, buzzcut, always expressionless. Ma'am, Mrs. Whitmore isn't receiving visitors today. I didn't slow down. Then tell her, it's family. He hesitated, spoke into his sleeve. A moment later the front door opened and there she was, Vivian, in cream slacks and a silk blouse the color of champagne. Pearls gleaming at her throat like tiny moons. She looked serene, untouched, as if she hadn't spent months orchestrating the destruction of my life. Alina, she said smoothly, this is unexpected. I walked past her into the foyer, the scent of lilies overwhelming. We need to talk. She closed the door with a soft click. Of course, darling. No. My voice came out steadier than I felt. I want you to call off your dogs. Stop the surveillance. Stop lying to my husband. Stop trying to take my children. For the first time in 12 years, her mask slipped just a flicker. Then the cool smile returned. I have no idea what you're talking about. I saw the evaluation. I know about the recordings. You've been building a case against me for months. She sighed, theatrical, and moved to the sitting room. I followed. Sunlight poured through tall windows, catching dust motes in the air like slow-motion snow. Alina, she said, lowering herself onto a velvet chaise. David is my only child. Those grandchildren are my legacy. If I believe their mother is unstable, it is my duty to protect them. Unstable. I laughed, sharp and bitter. You manufactured every bit of it. She tilted her head, studying me the way a scientist studies a specimen. Did I, or have you simply been unraveling and refusing to see it? The forgotten birthdays, the outbursts, the way you cling to David like a child with a toy. He's outgrown you, darling, and outgrown this little life you've trapped him in. The words landed like stones in my gut. I felt suddenly small in that cavernous room. My jeans and hoodie, childish against her elegance. You won't win, I said quietly. Her smile widened, almost tender. I already have. I left with my hands shaking so badly I could barely grip the steering wheel. The security man watched me go, expression unreadable. That afternoon, David came home early. 2 police officers were with him. My heart stopped. Alina, he said, voice cracking. Mom filed an emergency order of protection. She says you threatened her today. That you're a danger to yourself and the children." The officers were polite, almost apologetic. As they explained, I had to leave the house immediately. 20 minutes to pack a bag. The kids were already at Vivian's for their safety. I stood in our bedroom, numb, folding clothes with mechanical precision while David watched from the doorway, tears on his cheeks but arms folded like a guard. I didn't threaten her, I whispered. He wouldn't meet my eyes. "There's a video, Alina, from the house cameras. You looked unhinged." Of course there was video. She'd planned every angle. I kissed my babies goodbye through the window of Vivian's mansion an hour later, their confused faces pressed to the glass as she stood behind them, hand resting possessively on Lily's shoulder. Max was crying. Lily just looked betrayed. That night I sat in a sterile hotel room, the kind with scratchy sheets and a humming ice machine down the hall. I stared at my phone. David had blocked me. My parents lived 3 states away and had no money for lawyers. I had $4,200 in our joint savings he'd already frozen. I was 40 years old. And in one day I had become homeless, childless, and labeled a threat. But something shifted in that ugly beige room. Under the flicker of a dying light bulb, I stopped crying. And I started planning. Planning wasn't revenge, not at first. It was survival. In that hotel room, with the distant hum of traffic seeping through the thin walls, I sat cross-legged on the bed, laptop balanced on my knees. The screen's glow cast shadows on my face, making me look gaunt in the mirror across the room. I started simple. A simple list: assets, allies, evidence our joint accounts were frozen. But I had a credit card in my name, only maxed out soon, but enough for a few days. My parents wired what they could, $500 from their retirement fund. Their voices crackling over the phone with worry. "Come home, Alina," Mom urged, her tone soft like a worn flannel. But I couldn't. Not without my kids. I needed a lawyer. Scrolling through online reviews, fingers sticky from the vending machine candy bar I'd eaten for dinner, I found one. Sarah Klein, family law specialist with a no-nonsense profile photo. Her office was downtown, all glass and steel. I called the next morning, voice steady despite the knot in my throat. "Mrs. Thompson, tell me what happened." I did, words tumbling out in a rush. The surveillance, the falsified recordings, the emergency order. Sarah listened, her pen scratching faintly over the line. "This sounds like parental alienation and defamation," she said finally, "but we need proof. Do you have access to any records?" "Not yet," I admitted, twisting the hotel phone cord around my finger until it pinched. "Then get some. Discreetly. Discreetly." That became my mantra. I rented a cheap apartment, the next week a studio above a laundromat. The air always thick with detergent and dryer heat. It wasn't home, but it had a desk and Wi-Fi. I transferred my freelance work there, designing logos with one eye on the screen, the other on my phone for updates. David texted once. "Kids are fine. Mom's helping." No mention of me coming back. No apology. I started digging. First, public records. Vivian's estate had permits for security cameras, dozens of them. I noted the company, Elite Guard Services. A quick search showed they offered discreet monitoring packages, including audio. If she'd recorded me without consent, that was illegal in Illinois, a two-party state. But I needed more. I reached out to an old college friend, Mike, now a private investigator. We met at a coffee shop, steam rising from our mugs like secrets. His handshake was firm, eyes kind under bushy brows. "Alina, this is heavy. Alienating a parent, that's custody warfare." "I know," I said, stirring sugar into my cup, the spoon clinking rhythmically. "Can you help?" For a fee I could barely afford, he agreed. "I'll tail her security, see what I can find." While Mike worked, I focused on David. I unblocked him on a burner app and sent careful messages. "Missed the kids. Can we talk?" He responded sporadically, guarded. "Not now. Court date soon." The hearing was in 2 weeks temporary custody. I visited the kids supervised at Vivian's, twice a week. The security guard stood watch like a statue. Lily clung to me, her small arms tight around my neck, smelling of Vivian's expensive shampoo. "When are you coming home, Mommy?" Max was quieter, kicking at the rug, eyes downcast. Vivian hovered, offering tea. I refused, her smile ablaze. "They're adjusting well, Alina, perhaps it's for the best." I bit backwards, focused on the kids reading books, playing games on her pristine carpet. Each visit ended with hugs that felt like goodbyes, their tears damp on my shirt. Mike called after a week. "Got something? Elite Guards logs show they've been surveilling you for 4 months. Addresses, times even your grocery runs. And get this, payments from Vivian's personal account, not the business. How'd you get that? Don't ask. His chuckle was dry. But there's more. Audio files. She's been editing them, software traces on the metadata. Proof. Tangible, damning proof. I met Sarah at her office, handing over the flash drive with trembling hands. The leather chair creaked under me as she reviewed it. This is gold, she said, eyes lighting up. We can file for discovery, subpoena the full recordings, and countersue for defamation, invasion of privacy. For the first time in weeks, hope flickered warm like sunlight through cracks. But action meant confrontation. I drafted an email to David, attaching snippets Mike had cleared. See what she's done. She's manipulating you. Us. I hit send, heart pounding like a drum in my chest. He called an hour later. Alina, is this real? Yes, I whispered, pacing the tiny apartment, floorboards creaking. She's been lying, to protect her legacy, whatever that means. Silence stretched, broken only by his ragged breathing. I trusted her. I know. My voice softened. But trust me now. Help me fix this. He hung up without promising. But the seed was planted. The court hearing loomed. I prepared meticulously ironed blouses, notes in a folder smelling faintly of fresh ink. Sarah coached me. Stay calm. Facts over emotion. The courtroom was cold, fluorescent lights buzzing overhead. David sat with Vivian's lawyer, avoiding my gaze. Vivian herself was absent. Health reasons, they said. The judge, a stern woman with wire-rimmed glasses, reviewed the emergency order. Then Sarah presented our evidence, logs, metadata. A timeline of manipulation. Your Honor, Sarah said, voice clear and measured. This is not protection. It's persecution. David was called to testify. He shifted in the stand, hands clasped tight. I believed my mother. But now, I see the alterations. Elena's a good mother. Always has been. The judge's gavel came down. Order lifted, joint custody restored, pending full trial. Vivian to cease all surveillance. I exhaled, knees weak. Outside, David approached, eyes red-rimmed. I'm sorry, Elena, I should have listened. I nodded, throat tight. We'll talk. For the kids. That night, I hugged Lily and Max in our home there, real home, the scent of their shampoo, my own again. David slept on the couch, a tentative truce. But Vivian, she wasn't done. Not yet. The fallout spread like ripples in a pond. Word got out, small towns talk, and Chicago's elite circles even more. Vivian's social club, the one with galas and charity balls, started whispering. I didn't spread it. Mike's report leaked somehow. Perhaps a disgruntled security employee. First, a call from her bridge partner, overheard by David. Vivian darling, is it true? Tampering with evidence. Her voice, usually composed, cracked in denial. Then the newspaper's local society pages. Nothing front page, but enough. Wealthy widow accused of family manipulation. No names, but everyone knew. Her invitations dwindled. The gala she chaired, she stepped down for personal reasons. David confronted her. I wasn't there, but he told me later, over coffee at our kitchen table. Steam curling between us. She admitted it, he said quietly, stirring his mug absently. Said she did it for me. Thought you were holding me back from the family business. From better things, wanted the grandkids closer. Under her influence, I reached for his hand, our fingers interlacing. She's lonely, David. But that doesn't excuse it. He nodded, squeezed gently. I told her, boundaries or no contact. The community shifted. Friends we'd lost touch with, reached out, texts, calls, offers of support. At the kids' school, teachers who'd heard rumors now smiled warmly. One even saying, "You're strong, Mrs. Thompson. We see that." Vivian's security firm dropped her as a client reputation risk. I saw one of the guards at the grocery store once, nodded politely. He looked away, cheeks flushed. It wasn't cruelty. It was consequence. Justice in quiet waves, eroding her facade. She called me. Finally, voice thin over the line. Alina, can we meet? We did. At a neutral cafe. She looked smaller, pearls dull under the lights. No guards in sight. I was wrong, she said, hands folded on the table, veins blue under thin skin. I feared losing David. Losing them all. I sipped my tea, chamomile like that fateful day. Fear doesn't justify destroying a family. She nodded, eyes damp. I know I'm seeking help, therapy. It wasn't forgiveness, not yet, but it was a start. Months passed, like pages turning in a book I was finally rewriting. The house felt whole again, but scarred marks on the walls from where I'd packed in haste. Echoes of arguments in quiet corners. David and I started couples therapy. A neutral office with soft lighting and a therapist named Dr. Ruiz whose voice was like warm honey. We'd sit on opposite ends of a worn couch, unraveling the threads Vivian had tangled. At first, it was raw. I felt betrayed. I admitted one session, twisting a tissue in my lap until it shredded. By you, David. You chose her over us. He nodded, eyes downcast, his hand reaching for mine but stopping short. I was blind, raised to see her as infallible, but I see she's flawed, like all of us. Dr. Ruiz guided us through exercises, listing gratitudes, role-playing conversations. Slowly, trust is rebuilt, brick by brick. David cut back on work hours, helping with school runs, the car filled with kids' laughter and the crunch of snack wrappers. He cooked dinners sometimes, his apron dusted with flour as he attempted pancakes. The kitchen smoky but alive, the kids healed in their own ways. Lily drew pictures, family portraits with all of us together, crayons worn to nubs. Max had nightmares at first, waking with cries that pierced the night. I'd hold him, rocking gently, whispering stories until his breathing slowed. We enrolled them in play therapy, a colorful room with toys that clattered as they built forts from blocks, symbolizing safety. Vivian, she kept her distance, as per David's ultimatum, but she sent cards handwritten, the ink slightly smudged as if from hesitant pauses. Thinking of you. One read, no apologies yet, but a crack in her armor. David visited her alone, reporting back over evening walks, our footsteps sinking on the sidewalk. She's seeing a counselor too, admitting her control issues stem from losing Dad young. I nodded, the evening air cool on my skin. Good, but she needs to earn her way back. Work became my anchor. I took on more clients, my designs flowing freer now, bold colors, intricate patterns inspired by the chaos we'd survived. The sunroom office felt like a sanctuary again, plants thriving under my care, leaves brushing my arms as I sketched. Friendships mended too. Neighbors who'd heard the rumors now invited us for barbecues, the sizzle of burgers mingling with easy chatter. You're resilient, one said, clinking glasses. I smiled, feeling the weight lift a little more. Forgiveness came quietly, not in a rush but in moments. One Sunday, Vivian called David. I'd like to see the children, if Alina agrees. We discussed it that night, lying in bed with the window open, crickets chirping a lullaby. Supervised, I said, at our house. She arrived with a basket of homemade cookies, the kind with chocolate chips that melted warm in your mouth. No pearls, just a simple blouse. The kids hesitated at first, peeking from behind my legs. But Lily's curiosity won. She tugged Vivian's hand to show her drawings. Max followed, shy but warming. Vivian and I sat in the kitchen, steam from teacups curling between us. I'm sorry, Alina, she said finally, voice trembling like autumn leaves, for the pain I caused. I was afraid of being alone, of not mattering. I met her gaze, seeing the vulnerability beneath the poise. I forgive you, but trust is earned. She nodded, a tear slipping down her cheek. It wasn't perfect, but it was progress. As summer faded into fall, life settled into a new rhythm, stronger, more intentional. David and I renewed our vows in a small backyard ceremony, just us and the kids. String lights twinkling like stars. I choose you, he whispered, slipping the ring back on, his thumb brushing my knuckle. The kids cheered, petals scattering like confetti. I started a blog anonymously sharing stories of family resilience. The words flowing from scars turned to strength. Readers commented, this helped me through my own storm. It felt like purpose, turning pain into light. Healing wasn't linear. Some days doubt crept back, like shadows at dusk, but we faced them together. Talks over coffee, hugs that lingered. The house smelled of fresh bread again, laughter echoing off the walls. In the end, I emerged, not broken, but remade, fiercer, wiser. Family isn't blood alone, it's the bonds we choose to mend. Looking back now, from the quiet of my sunroom on a December morning, the one where frost feathers the windows and the radiator clanks like an old friend, I can see how far we've come. The kids are older. Lily is 13 now, all long limbs and sarcastic wit, rolling her eyes when I still cut the crusts off her sandwiches for old time's sake. Max is 11, voice cracking, obsessed with basketball and sneaking extra screen time. David's hair has a little more silver at the temples. But when he laughs, really laughs, the lines around his eyes are from joy. Not strain. Vivian still lives in that big house, but it's different now. She sold half the acreage last year, said it was too much to keep up alone, and turned part of the garden into a community plot for the neighborhood kids. I see her there sometimes when I drive past, kneeling in the dirt with a sun hat and gloves, teaching little ones how to plant bulbs. She waves. I wave back. It's taken years, but the wave doesn't cost me anything anymore. We see her every other Sunday. Not out of obligation, but because the children asked. She comes to us now, no security trailing behind, no pearls. Just a soft cardigan and the faint scent of the lavender soap she's used since David was small. She sits at our kitchen table, hands wrapped around a mug, and listens while the kids talk over each other about school and friends and the new puppy that chewed my favorite slippers. Sometimes she brings photo albums, yellowed pictures of David as a gap-toothed boy, and we laugh until our sides hurt at his awful bowl haircut. There is space now for those stories, space that used to be filled with fear. Forgiveness didn't happen in one grand moment. It happened in 1,000 tiny ones. The first time she apologized without defending herself. The first holiday she asked what she could bring instead of assuming she'd host. The first time she looked me in the eye and said, "I was wrong, Alina, full stop." It happened when she paid for the kids' therapy without being asked and never once mentioned it again. It happened when David told her, gently but firmly, that if she ever tried to come between us again, she would lose him for good, and she believed him. I won't pretend it's perfect. There are still moments, Christmas, 2 years ago, when she made a comment about my weight. Thinly veiled as concern where the old anger flares hot in my chest. I excuse myself, breathe in the cold air on the porch until it cools. Some wounds scar, they don't disappear, but scars are proof you survived. I learned something vital through all of it. Love isn't the absence of conflict. It's the choice to stay when conflict comes. David chose to stay and do the hard work. I chose to stay and do the hard work. Even Vivian, in her broken way, chose to stay and face what she'd done instead of retreating into pride. These days I mentor other women quietly, over coffee or late-night messages, who find themselves suddenly on the outside of their own lives. Mothers accused, wives painted as villains, daughters-in-law turned into cautionary tales by powerful matriarchs. I listened the way Sarah Klein once listened to me, and I tell them the same thing. Document everything. Protect your children with truth, not with louder shouting. Never let someone else write the story of who you are, and when they ask how I got through the nights when I wasn't sure I'd ever hold my babies again, I tell them about the hotel room with the humming ice machine, about the moment I stopped crying and started planning. I tell them that strength isn't loud. Sometimes it's just refusing to let someone else's fear decide your future. This morning, David brought me coffee in bed black, 2 sugars, the way I've liked it since we were 19. The puppy snored at our feet. Lily burst in, demanding a ride to practice. Max trailing behind, asking if pancakes were an option. Just an ordinary Saturday, loud and messy in hours. That's the real ending, I think. Not the courtroom win, not the public whispers dying down, not even Vivian's slow redemption. The real ending is this: a life reclaimed, piece by piece, until the cracks let the light in instead of leaking it out. So I ask you, the one listening with your own hurts tucked close to your chest, maybe a mother-in-law who sees you as less, maybe a spouse who believed the worst, maybe a family that closed ranks against you. When they tried to take your place, what did you do? Did you shrink to fit their story? Or did you stand up and write the truth in your own hand? Tell me in the comments. You are not alone, and if this story helped you even a little, share it with someone who needs to hear they're stronger than the lies told about them. Thank you for sitting with me while I remembered. Until next time, take care of your hearts.